Dozens of Lebanese protesters occupied the Ministry of Environment, calling on the minister to resign over rubbish disposal crisis, the latest in a wave of protests against a paralyzed political system.
Hundreds of migrants are stranded in Budapest after Hungarian police stopped trains leaving for Austria and Germany in a bid to stop them travelling onwards.
And world stock indexes and commodities drop as weak Chinese data revive fears about the effect of China's economic health on the global economy and fuels more market turmoil. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news.
Good evening.
We begin here at home, where border guard troops killed a Syrian man and wounded another as they tried to infiltrate into the kingdom across the northern frontier. A statement by the Jordan Armed Forces, Arab Army, said that border guard patrols this morning spotted two people of Syrian nationality attempting to trespass the border from Syria into Jordanian territory. Consequently, rapid response troops dealt with the situation with due firmness and force, applying the rules of engagement in such cases, which led to one of the infiltrators being killed and the other seriously wounded.
The United Nations agency said satellite images have confirmed the destruction of the Temple of Baal, which was one of the best preserved Roman-era sites in the Syrian city of Palmyra. The confirmation came after the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and other activists said Daesh terrorists had targeted the temple, which for nearly 2,000 years has been the center of religious life in Palmyra. A comparison before and after images show the damage to the temple at the UNESCO World Heritage Site. The destruction came a week after Daesh blew up another smaller site in the central desert city. UNESCO has called such acts war crimes and says Daesh seeks to wipe out evidence of Syria's diverse heritage.
Oh, for sure that sometimes after the 27th of August, most likely on the 30th of August, this temple was blown up by explosives. Then we have been able to get a picture, a satellite image dating from yesterday that shows the extent of the damage. The resolution is not extremely high, but it's high enough to be able to tell that unfortunately the main cell, the main part of the temple is gone, with the exception of one part of the portal, the entrance to the temple. I think you will not be able to silence, thousands of years of history and civilization just by destroying the stones of a temple, as painful as this can be for those like us who sort of love history and art.
Meanwhile, the United States and its allies conducted 19 airstrikes against Daesh terrorists in Iraq and Syria since yesterday. In Iraq, 13 strikes hit near Biji, Mosul, Ramadi and other towns, while in Syria, 6 attacks hit tactical units, fighting positions, a training camp and other targets.
Dozens of protesters occupied the Environment Ministry in the Lebanese capital Beirut, calling on Minister Mohammed al-Mashnouk to resign over a rubbish disposal crisis. Hundreds of other protesters gathered outside the building as riot police took up positions in surrounding streets, and the You Sting anti-government campaign called for a new rally in a nearby square in the afternoon. The protesters said it was not clear whether the Environment Minister was still in the building, as the members of staff locked their office doors and left. The Environment Minister has refused to resign, but withdrew yesterday from a committee dealing with the garbage crisis that has not mollified protesters. Protesters say the rubbish crisis reflects the failures of a political system run by sectarian politicians.
An Israeli raid to arrest a Palestinian activist sparked a gun battle that ended with a West Bank home being bulldozed and at least 5 Palestinians wounded. Clashes broke out during a multi-agency operation to arrest a senior Hamas member in the city of Jenin last night. The fate of the wanted man was not immediately clear, as Israeli soldiers demolished a house in Jenin in which he was suspected of hiding. 5 Palestinians suffered excessive tear gas inhalation and had to be taken to hospital for treatment. Palestinian officials condemned this practice as an encroachment on the limited self-rule they hold in parts of the West Bank.
In international news, large groups of migrants continue to disembark at Munich train station, with thousands arriving in Germany and Austria since the beginning of the week after authorities in Budapest let them board trains in a surprise move. With around 2,000 arriving in Munich alone, police have faced a challenge processing them, while volunteers have stepped in to provide food and water. Hungarian authorities shut Budapest's Eastern Railway terminus altogether today, then reopened it but barred entry to migrants. Hundreds of angry migrants demonstrated outside, demanding they be allowed to travel on to Germany, which expects to receive around 800,000 migrants this year. With Germany struggling to cope with the influx, Chancellor Angela Merkel has said the crisis could destroy the Schengen Open Borders Accord if other EU countries did not take a greater share to ensure a fair distribution of refugees. But it's far from certain her view will prevail when EU ministers hold a crisis meeting on September 14.
And in business news, Wall Street slumped today, pushing all three major indexes into negative territory for the year after weak factory data from China heightened fears of a slowdown in the world's second largest economy and its effect on global growth. Energy stocks led the fall, with the S&P Energy Index declining 3.6%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 2.16%. All the 30 Dow components were in the red. The Nasdaq Composite was down 1.69%, and the S&P 500 was down 2.11%.
Britain's Royal Mint released a brand new coin to commemorate Queen Elizabeth overtaking Queen Victoria to become the longest-serving British monarch in history next week. The new £20 coin is designed to show the Queen from 5 different portraits at various points throughout her 63-year reign. 150,000 coins are available, and the British public will be able to buy the coins made from fine silver for £20. Queen Elizabeth surpasses Victoria's record reign of 63 years and 216 days next week.
She's grown up on sort of UK coinage, so we can sort of watch her age in front of us. So the idea was that we show all the portraits of the Majesty on the coin, and then using sort of royal regalia to sort of highlight the coin, really.
Embrace yourselves. A new 4-wheeled electric spider car, allowing it to tackle the toughest off-road terrain, is set to hit the market. The vehicle, produced by a company based in the south of France, is called a Swin Car and will go into production at the end of October. The idea of the design was born out of looking at people going down mountains, driving vehicles which were more or less suitable. The 1.3 meter long by 1.3 meter wide vehicle is made of aluminum bars, weighs 150 kilograms and can reach a maximum speed of 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. Each wheel has its own electric motor and independent suspension at the end of each arm, which means they can tilt independently with the driver's seat swinging in between, allowing the driver to stay upright. The car can drive on slopes with an inclination of up to 70%.
Manchester United's Spain goalkeeper David De Gea was facing uncertain future after his expected move to Real Madrid was apparently scuppered when the paperwork did not arrive at the Spanish league on time. De Gea signed his new contract, but the documents did not reach the professional league's offices by the midnight cutoff yesterday. FIFA rules state that players can only be registered during one of 2 annual transfer periods, the other in January. And as things stand, De Gea, whose deal with the United expires at the end of the season, could find himself out in the cold at least until the end of this year.
And organizers for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics withdrew today the official logo announced for the Games just only a month ago due to the public's concern about whether the logo was plagiarized. Questions about the logo arose after its July unveiling when a Belgian designer said it was too similar for a logo he's created and demanded its use to be halted. The designer of the Tokyo Games logo from the start denied plagiarism, and Japanese officials stood firmly behind him. But public concern grew last month after the same designer asked a company to withdraw some designs for promotional goods, admitting that they had been copied.
Now let's have a look at the weather forecast. Pleasant in most regions for the rest of tonight and moderate in the Jordan Valley and the Gulf of Aqaba with some low clouds and northwesterly light winds. Tomorrow, relatively hot conditions are expected across the kingdom as temperatures slightly rise to become around seasonal average, while winds will be northwesterly moderate.
And the Gulf of Aqaba can definitely expect hotter conditions with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Here now is the temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. Dozens of Lebanese protesters occupy the Ministry of Environment, calling on the minister to resign over rubbish disposal crisis, the latest in a wave of protests against a paralyzed political system.
Hundreds of migrants are stranded in Budapest after Hungarian police stopped trains leaving for Austria and Germany in a bid to stop them traveling onwards.
And world stock indexes and commodities drop as weak Chinese data revive fears about the effect of China's economic health on the global economy and fuels more market turmoil. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Ali Tuqan.
And I'm Louay Balkar. Thank you for watching and have a good night.
Good night.